The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a kilometer in every direction. Thousands of species gathered here, their forms ranging from the elegant crystalline structures of the Luminae to the massive slug-like bodies of the Orthocan. Today, they had all come to witness something unusual. Humanity was requesting membership. Ambassador Velshara stood at the central podium. Her forearms gestured gracefully as she presented Earth's application. The holographic displays behind her showed images of human civilization. Cities gleaming with lights, ships traveling between planets, technology that seemed impressive to younger species, but outdated to the older council members. "The humans of Earth seek to join our community," Velshara announced. Her voice carried across the chamber through translation devices. "They have achieved faster-than-light travel. They have unified their world under a single government. They meet the basic requirements for membership." A low murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. Many species exchanged looks that ranged from curiosity to amusement. Humans were new. They were unknown. And from what the reports showed, they were shockingly violent. Council member Zixthorn rose from his seat. He was a Kravik, a species that had been part of the council for over 50,000 years. His scaled body gleamed under the chamber lights. "If I may address the matter of human history," he said, his voice carrying a tone of barely concealed mockery. The displays changed. Now they showed Earth's wars, the trenches of the First World War, the atomic bombs falling on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the burning cities of the Third World War. The numbers scrolled past. Millions dead, tens of millions, hundreds of millions across their violent history. These humans celebrate victories where millions of their own kind died. Zixthorn continued. They built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. They nearly rendered their world uninhabitable multiple times. And they call this progress? Laughter echoed through the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind reserved for children who don't understand adult matters. To these ancient species, humanity looked like aggressive primitives playing with dangerous toys. In civilized warfare, Zixthorn explained, conflicts are resolved with minimal casualties. Precise strikes on military targets only. Acceptable losses measured in thousands, not millions. We have rules, protocols, and agreements that have kept galactic peace for 200,000 years. He gestured to the human delegation sitting in the visitors section. Admiral Victoria Chen sat among them, her military uniform crisp and formal. Her face remained neutral, but her fingers tapped a steady rhythm against her data pad, an old habit from her days commanding warships. "I propose we accept the humans," Zixthorn said, and the chamber quieted. "But not as full members. They can serve as guardians, enforcers for minor disputes. Their violent nature makes them suitable for such tasks." More murmurs of agreement now. The council had used guardian species before, civilizations that were useful for their military strength, but not refined enough for full diplomatic status. It was a practical solution. Ambassador Chen was called forward to respond. She walked to the podium with measured steps. Every eye in the chamber watched her, some with curiosity, others with pity for this primitive who didn't understand how the galaxy really worked. "The United Earth government thanks the council for this opportunity," Chen said. Her voice was calm and professional. "We accept the guardian designation and look forward to proving ourselves worthy of full membership in time." She didn't argue. She didn't defend humanity's violent history. She simply accepted the council's judgment. This surprised many of the delegates. They expected protests or passionate speeches about human dignity. As Chen returned to her seat, she passed close to Velshara. The Cathani ambassador leaned in slightly. "A word of advice, Admiral. The Council values patience and protocol above all else. Follow the rules and humanity will advance. Break them and you'll find yourselves isolated." Chen nodded politely. "Thank you, Ambassador. We understand the importance of rules," the vote was called. It was nearly unanimous. Humanity would join the Galactic Council as guardians. They would have limited voting rights and would be called upon to handle minor military situations that the more civilized species preferred to avoid. After the session ended, the human delegation gathered in their assigned quarters. The rooms were comfortable but clearly designed for visiting dignitaries, not permanent members. Everything about their situation screamed temporary and lesser. "They think we're stupid barbarians," Commander Jackson said, pacing the room. He was Chen's second in command, a veteran of the Mars Colonies rebellion. "Did you hear them laughing?" Like we're cavemen who just discovered fire. Let them think that, Chen replied. She stood by the window, looking out at the massive space station that housed the council. Thousands of ships came and went, representing hundreds of species. It's better this way. Better? Jackson stopped pacing. How is being treated like primitive thugs better? Chen turned to face her team. Because they've invited us into their home. They've given us access to their military protocols, their databases, their methods. They think we're too stupid to be a threat. She pulled up a hologram showing the Civilized Warfare Accords. Thousands of pages of rules governing how council species could engage in military action. Restrictions on weapons. Limits on targets. Protocols for surrender and negotiation. Requirements for third-party arbitration. Look at this, Chen said, scrolling through the document. They've turned war into a game. They have rules for everything. Maximum acceptable casualties. Banned weapons lists. Designated combat zones. They even have referees who monitor battles to ensure compliance. Commander Jackson studied the hologram with growing disbelief. This is insane. What happens if someone doesn't follow the rules? Then the council intervenes with sanctions, trade restrictions, and eventually military action. But everyone follows the rules because that's how it's been done for 200,000 years. Chen closed the hologram. They've forgotten what real war looks like. And they think we'll follow these rules too, Jackson said, understanding dawning on his face. We will, Chen said firmly. Until the moment comes when we can't. When following the rules means losing everything. That's when they'll learn the difference between civilized warfare and human warfare. The door chimed. Ambassador Velshara entered, her forearms carrying data tablets. Admiral Chen, I wanted to provide you with the Guardian operational guidelines. Your first assignment will likely be simple. A border dispute between two minor species. Nothing dangerous. We're ready to serve, Chen assured her. After Velshara left, Jackson looked at his commander. Do you think it'll really come to that? A situation where we have to show them what we're capable of. Chen walked back to the window. Out in the darkness of space, she could see Earth in the distance. A small blue world that had survived countless wars, near extinctions and self-inflicted catastrophes. A world that had learned the hardest lessons about survival. I hope not, she said quietly. I really hope not. Because if it does come to that, if we have to show them what humanity does when survival is on the line. She paused, remembering the history lessons, the desperate measures, the terrible choices, the victories purchased with blood and nightmares. Then they'll never look at us the same way again, Jackson finished. Chen nodded. They'll fear us. They'll need us. And they'll hate us for reminding them that the universe isn't as civilized as they pretend it is. The lights of the council station continued to twinkle peacefully outside, thousands of species living in harmony, protected by ancient rules and comfortable traditions. They had no idea that they had just invited something dangerous into their perfect world, not because humans were evil or cruel, but because humanity remembered what the council had forgotten. That sometimes survival requires you to break every rule, to do terrible things, to become the monster so that others might live. And humanity was very, very good at surviving. The emergency alarm echoed through the council station at 0300 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Chen woke instantly, years of military training bringing her to full alertness. Her communicator was already buzzing with incoming messages, all of them marked urgent. She reached the council chambers within minutes. The massive hall that had seemed so peaceful during her induction now pulsed with panic. Delegates shouted across the floor. Holographic displays showed scenes of destruction. And at the center of it all stood Keeper Isaldrin, the ancient council primarch, calling for order. The Velkari swarm has entered council space, Isaldrin announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. They have rejected all diplomatic communications. 3 colony worlds have gone silent in the past 6 hours. Chen pulled up the tactical displays on her personal device. The Velkari were a hive mind species from beyond the Outer Rim. According to the database, they had clashed with the council before. But those conflicts had always ended in negotiated settlements after limited military engagements. Ambassador Velshara appeared beside Chen. This has happened before, she explained, reading Chen's confused expression. The Velkari expand periodically. We engage them according to the accords, demonstrate our military capability, and they withdraw. It's almost routine, almost routine. Chen stared at the images of burning colonies. Those look like civilian settlements. The Velkhari sometimes bend the rules, Velshara admitted. But once we respond with proportional force, they typically return to negotiations. The Council voted quickly to authorize military action. The response force would be led by the Kravik Armada, veterans of dozens of Council conflicts. They would engage the Velkhari fleet at the designated combat zone near the Xerxes Nebula. Neutral observers would monitor the battle to ensure Accord's compliance. Everything by the book. Chen watched the Kravik fleet deploy. Hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation. Their tactics were beautiful, almost artistic. They targeted only Velkhari military vessels. They used approved weapons that created minimal collateral damage. They even broadcast warnings before each strike, giving the enemy time to evacuate damaged ships. The Velkhari response was brutal. They ignored every rule. Their weapons tore through Council shields with horrifying efficiency. They targeted civilian evacuation ships. They used biological weapons banned for 50,000 years. And they didn't retreat. Within 2 weeks, the Velkhari had destroyed 12 colony worlds. The death toll climbed into the millions. The Kravik Armada, following every protocol and regulation, found themselves overwhelmed by an enemy who fought without restraint. The Council held emergency session after emergency session. They debated acceptable Accords violations. They formed committees to study the Velkhari tactics. They drafted amendments to allow more aggressive responses. But every decision took time. Time that cost lives. We need to escalate our response, Commander Zixthorn argued during one heated session. Request permission to use Class B weapons. Authorize strikes on Velkhari industrial targets. Expand the combat zone parameters. The debates continued. Each proposed change required Council approval. Each approval required majority votes. Each vote took days while the Velkhari advanced deeper into Council space. Chen sat in the visitors' gallery, watching with growing frustration. Commander Jackson sat beside her, his jaw clenched tight. They're going to talk themselves to death, he muttered. No, Chen corrected. They're going to follow the rules to death. It's all they know. On the main display, new casualty reports appeared. Colony Praxis 7 had fallen. 2 million inhabitants, most of them civilians who died when the Velkhari ignored their surrender signals and destroyed the entire orbital infrastructure. That's when something changed in the chamber. The endless debates paused. Delegates who had been arguing about proper protocol suddenly looked uncertain. Fear replaced procedure in their eyes. Keeper Isaldrin stood. We are losing this conflict, she stated simply. The Velkhari are not following the Accords. Our forces are constrained by rules that our enemy ignores. We must consider alternative options. Alternative options? The Lumini delegate's crystalline body flickered with alarm. You're suggesting we violate the Accords ourselves? I'm suggesting we may not survive this conflict if we don't adapt, Isaldrin replied. Silence fell across the chamber. The idea of breaking the civilized warfare Accords was unthinkable. These rules had governed galactic conflict for 200,000 years. They were the foundation of Council civilization. Chen saw her moment. She stood and requested permission to address the Council. Surprise murmurs rippled through the chamber. Guardian species rarely spoke during Council sessions. Admiral Chen of Earth, Isaldrin acknowledged. You may speak. Chen walked to the central podium. Every delegate watched her with curiosity mixed with desperation. She had been studying the Velkhari for weeks now, studying their tactics, their strategy, their objectives. The Velkhari aren't just expanding their territory, Chen began. They're testing you. They've learned that Council species will always follow the rules. They're exploiting your civilization against you. And you propose we become uncivilized like them? Zixthorn challenged. No, Chen said calmly. I propose you let humanity handle this. The chamber erupted in debate. Let the primitive humans handle a major military crisis? It was absurd. It was desperate. It was possibly their only option. You've been Council members for mere months, Velshara objected. You have no experience with galactic warfare. Your entire fleet is smaller than a single Kravik battle group. True, Chen acknowledged. But we have something you don't. We have experience fighting enemies who don't follow rules. We've been doing it for our entire history. She pulled up Earth's military database. Images of asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, total war doctrines. The shocked faces of Council delegates told her they were beginning to understand. You've spent 200,000 years refining civilized warfare, Chen continued. We've spent 10,000 years perfecting the uncivilized kind. The Velkari think they're brutal. They have no idea what real brutality looks like. You're suggesting we give you military authority? Hysaldrin asked carefully. Emergency military authority, Chen clarified. Give us 3 months. If we can't resolve the Velkari situation in that time, we'll return command to the Council. The debate raged for hours. Finally, desperation won. The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would be given temporary command of Council forces in the conflict zone. They would have access to military resources and intelligence. But there was one condition. You must follow the Civilized Warfare Accords, Hysaldrin stated firmly. We will not abandon 200,000 years of civilization because of one crisis. Chen looked at the Primarch. She thought about the millions already dead, the colonies burning, the enemy that respected no rules. She thought about what humanity would need to do to win this war. We'll resolve this situation, Chen promised. Efficiently. She didn't promise to follow the Accords. And if Hysaldrin noticed the omission, she chose not to comment. As the session ended, Chen returned to her quarters. Jackson was waiting with the rest of the human command staff. They actually gave us authority? He asked, disbelief clear in his voice. They're desperate, Chen replied. She pulled up tactical maps of the conflict zone. Get me everything on Velkari command structure, supply lines, and homeworld locations. Also, I want our entire fleet mobilized. Bring everything. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology we've been developing in secret. Are we really going to do this? Commander Singh asked quietly. Are we going to show them what we're capable of? Chen looked at her officers. These were veterans of Earth's bloodiest conflicts. They had fought in the AI wars. They had survived the Battle of Europa. They knew what was coming. The Velkari have killed millions of Council citizens, Chen said. They'll kill millions more if we don't stop them. The Council can't stop them because they're too civilized, too bound by rules, too afraid of becoming monsters. She activated the holographic display showing Earth, their small, violent survivor world. But we're not afraid of being monsters, she continued, because we've been monsters before. We know what it costs. We know what it takes. And we know how to win wars that can't be won by following rules. The orders went out that night. The United Earth Fleet began moving toward the conflict zone. Ships equipped with weapons the Council had never seen, tactics drawn from humanity's darkest chapters, and a commander who understood that sometimes, to save civilization, you had to be willing to destroy it. The Velkari were about to learn why humanity had nearly destroyed itself multiple times and still survived. The United Earth Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the conflict zone. 300 ships arranged in formations that made no sense to the Council observers embedded with them. Traditional battle groups spread their forces evenly for maximum coverage. Human ships clustered in tight, aggressive patterns that seemed to ignore basic tactical doctrine. Observer Talana of the Lumini stood on the bridge of the UES terminus, Admiral Chen's flagship. Her crystalline form flickered with nervous energy as she watched the human crew work. They moved with efficient precision, but there was something unsettling about their calm. They acted like surgeons preparing for a routine operation, not soldiers heading into battle. Admiral Chen, Talana said, her voice translated through the standard communicator. I must remind you of the Civilized Warfare Accords. All military actions must be proportional, targeted, and Observer Talana, Chen interrupted gently. I suggest you prepare yourself. What you're about to see won't resemble anything in your experience. The main display showed the tactical situation. Velkari forces controlled 17 systems, their fleets numbered in the thousands. Council forces had pulled back to defensive positions, following proper protocols for strategic retreat. We'll engage the Velkari fleet at the Xerxes Nebula, Talana suggested. It's the designated combat zone. Neutral arbiters are already in position. Chen shook her head. We're not engaging their fleet, but that's how warfare is conducted. Fleet engagements in neutral territory. Observers monitoring for Accords compliance. Civilized combat. Civilized combat is why you're losing, Commander Jackson said from his station. The Velkari have 17 fleets spread across occupied systems. If we fight them one at a time in designated zones, this war will last years. Chen pulled up a new tactical display. It showed the entire Velkari strategic infrastructure. Supply routes highlighted in red. Communication nodes pulsing yellow. Industrial centers marked in orange. and at the center 3 massive hive clusters including their homeworld. We're not fighting their fleets, Chen explained. We're fighting their civilization. Talana's crystalline body flickered with alarm. You can't target civilian infrastructure? That's the first rule of the Accords. Military targets only. To do otherwise is effective, Chen finished coldly. The human fleet split into multiple task forces, small groups of ships each with specific objectives. Talana watched in growing horror as the plan unfolded. This wasn't warfare. This was systematic destruction. Task Force Alpha deployed thousands of autonomous hunter-killer drones. These machines were smaller than traditional fighters, nearly invisible to sensors. They didn't engage enemy fleets. Instead, they tracked individual Velkari ships through hyperspace, learning their routes and patterns. Task Force Beta seeded every major Velkari supply route with self-replicating mines. Not the regulated, easily detected mines approved by the Accords. These were intelligent weapons that hid in asteroid fields and debris clouds, waiting for specific Velkari signatures before activating. Task Force Gamma did something that made Talana physically recoil. They hacked into the Velkari communication network. The hivemind species relied on quantum-entangled nodes to coordinate across vast distances. The humans found vulnerabilities in those nodes and began injecting false data. This is illegal, Talana protested. Digital warfare against communication infrastructure violates 12 separate articles of the Accords. Then it's fortunate we never agreed to the Accords, Chen replied calmly. On her display, the Velkari military infrastructure began to collapse. Supply ships disappeared in the mined routes. Fleets received contradictory orders from their corrupted communication nodes. Hunter-killer drones eliminated isolated vessels before they could call for help. And through it all, the human fleet never engaged in a single direct battle. You're not warriors, Talana whispered in horror. You're exterminators. Chen turned to face the observer. No, we're survivors. And we learned a long time ago that the best way to win a war is to make it impossible for your enemy to fight one. Commander Singh approached the admiral. Ma'am, we've identified all 3 major hive clusters. Strategic analysis confirms these are the primary coordination centers for Velkari military operations. If we eliminate them, the remaining forces will be unable to maintain organized resistance. What are you planning? Talana demanded. Chen pulled up an image of the Velkari homeworld, a massive planet teeming with billions of Velkari drones. The hive clusters glowed on the surface, enormous biological structures that served as the hive mind's brain centers. We're going to send them a message, Chen said. Open a channel to the Velkari hive mind. The communication officer worked for several minutes before establishing a connection. The Velkari consciousness manifested as a pulsing pattern on the display, alien and hostile. Chen stood before it. Velkari hive mind. This is Admiral Victoria Chen of the United Earth Fleet. You have 72 hours to withdraw all forces from Council space and return to your own territory. This is your only warning. The Velkari response came in images rather than words. Images of their vast fleets. Their overwhelming numbers, their confidence in inevitable victory. They dismissed humanity as another weak council species. Chen's expression didn't change. You have 72 hours, the channel closed. Talana stared at the admiral. They won't withdraw. They outnumber you 100 to 1, and you just revealed your intentions. They'll fortify their hive clusters, prepare defenses. You've given them time to be afraid, Chen interrupted. Fear is a weapon, observer. One your civilization forgot how to use. The 72 hours passed with agonizing slowness. The Velkari didn't withdraw. Instead, they massed their fleets around their home systems exactly as Talana predicted. They prepared for a massive defensive battle. They prepared for the wrong kind of war. When the deadline expired, Chen gave a single order. Execute Protocol Omega. What happened next would be studied and debated for generations. Human historians would call it the most precise military operation in Earth's history. Council historians would call it the day humanity revealed its true nature. Across 17 star systems, human forces struck simultaneously. Not at the Velkari fleets, not at military installations. At everything, quantum disruption weapons collapsed every Velkari FTL communication node in the same microsecond. The hive mind, dependent on instantaneous coordination, suddenly found itself blind and deaf across its entire territory. Relativistic kinetic bombardment rained down on Velkari industrial centers. Tungsten rods accelerated to a fraction of light speed. No explosions. No radiation, just pure kinetic energy vaporizing everything in the target zones. Biodigital viruses infiltrated the hive mind's biological networks. These weapons didn't kill Velkari drones. They corrupted the neural pathways that connected them to the collective consciousness. Millions of drones suddenly found themselves individual, aware and terrified. And at the three hive clusters, including their homeworld, human ships unleashed weapons that Talana couldn't even identify. Reality seemed to bend and tear around the target zones. The massive biological structures that house the hive mind's central consciousness simply ceased to exist. No explosion. No debris. One moment they were there. The next they were gone. The entire operation took 17 minutes. Talana stood frozen on the bridge, her crystalline form dim with shock. Around her, human crew members worked calmly, monitoring the results. No celebration. No triumph. Just professional efficiency. Status report, Chen ordered. All primary targets eliminated, Commander Singh reported. Velkari military infrastructure degraded by 97%. Remaining forces showing signs of complete disorganization. They're retreating on all fronts. Casualties? On our side? 12 drones lost to unexpected debris fields. No human casualties, Singh paused. Velkari casualties are difficult to estimate. Conservative estimate puts it at 40% of their military capability. Unknown civilian casualties, 40%, in 17 minutes. Talana felt her consciousness wavering. In Council history, the bloodiest battle had resulted in 3% casualties over 6 months of fighting. What have you done? She whispered. Chen turned to face her. We ended the war. You've committed genocide, mass murder. You've violated every principle of civilized warfare. We eliminated a military threat, Chen corrected. The Velkari drones who survived are being freed from hive mind control. They'll have the chance to develop individual consciousness. The industrial centers we destroyed can be rebuilt. The communication networks can be restored. But they'll never threaten Council space again. You didn't give them a chance to surrender. We gave them 72 hours, Chen said coldly. They chose not to take it. Talana sent immediate reports back to the Council. Reports filled with horror and disbelief. The Council had asked humanity to resolve the situation. They had no idea resolve meant obliterate. As the human fleet prepared to return to Council space, Talana approached Admiral Chen one final time. How can you sleep at night? Knowing what you've done? Chen was quiet for a long moment. I sleep knowing that millions of Council citizens will go home to their families because we did what was necessary. I sleep knowing that we stopped an enemy that your rules couldn't touch. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so crowded. Every species sent representatives. Every delegate wanted to witness what many were calling the most important trial in galactic history. Humanity stood accused of crimes that shocked the civilized galaxy. Admiral Victoria Chen stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing the evidence. Images of destroyed Velkari infrastructure, casualty estimates, weapon analyses, each piece of evidence more damning than the last. The charges were read by Prosecutor Velthon, a Kravik legal expert who had spent 3 centuries studying the civilized warfare accords. His voice carried the weight of moral authority as he listed humanity's crimes. Genocide against the Velkari species, he began. The deliberate and systematic destruction of a sapient civilization. The humans eliminated 40% of Velkari military capability in 17 minutes. Billions of drones killed or permanently separated from the hive mind. Chen stood silently, her expression neutral. She had been ordered not to speak until it was her turn to present a defense. But her eyes tracked every accusation, every piece of evidence. Violation of 437 articles of the Civilized Warfare Accords, Velthon continued. Targeting civilian infrastructure. Using banned weapons including relativistic kinetic bombardment and biodigital warfare. Refusing quarter to enemies. Conducting warfare outside designated combat zones. Refusing neutral arbitration. The list went on. Each violation was documented, analyzed, and presented to the Council. The evidence was overwhelming. Humanity had broken every rule, ignored every protocol, rejected every principle of civilized warfare. And perhaps most disturbing, Velthon said, his voice dropping to emphasize the point, Humanity showed no remorse, no hesitation. They executed their plan with cold efficiency, as if the destruction of an entire civilization was routine. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many delegates looked at the human contingent with fear and disgust. These weren't soldiers. They were monsters wearing civilized faces. The prosecution rests, Velthon concluded. We recommend immediate expulsion from the Council, dismantling of human military capability, and permanent restrictions on human expansion. The galaxy cannot afford to have such dangerous primitives among civilized species. Silence fell. All eyes turned to the human delegation. According to Council procedure, they now had the right to present their defense. But what defense could possibly justify such actions? Lead advocate Marcus Webb stood. He was human, but he had been born on a Council colony world. He understood both cultures. And he understood that this trial wasn't really about rules and violations. It was about fear. Honored Council members, Webb began. The prosecution has presented a compelling case. Humanity did violate the civilized warfare accords. We did target civilian infrastructure. We did use weapons that your civilization banned thousands of years ago. And we did it all with the efficiency and cold calculation of a species that has practiced warfare for its entire existence. The admission shocked the chamber. Delegates exchanged confused glances. Was the defense actually agreeing with the charges? But before you judge us, Webb continued, I ask you to understand why those accords exist in the first place. He activated a holographic display showing ancient Council history. Images of the Great Conflagration, the war that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization 10,000 years ago. The burned worlds, the species driven to extinction, the horrors that had motivated the creation of the civilized warfare accords. You created these rules because you experienced unlimited warfare, Webb explained. You learned the cost of total war and decided never again. You built a civilization based on limiting conflict, restricting weapons, and ensuring that war never threatened entire species. He paused, letting the history sink in. But then something happened. You became so successful at limiting war that you forgot why those limits existed. You forgot what real war looks like. You turned warfare into a game with rules and referees. You forgot that rules only work when both sides agree to follow them. The display changed. Now it showed Earth's history. Ancient battles where entire cities burned. Medieval sieges that lasted years. Industrial wars that consumed millions. Nuclear exchanges that nearly ended human civilization. Humanity never forgot, Webb said quietly, because we never stopped fighting. We fought ourselves for 10,000 years. We came within hours of rendering our planet uninhabitable multiple times. We developed weapons that could crack planets. We created artificial intelligence that tried to exterminate us. We survived extinction events that would have destroyed any other species. Images of human resilience played across the displays. Refugees rebuilding from nuclear ashes. Survivors of the AI wars reprogramming hostile machines. The unity government formed from the ashes of the Third World War. We survived because we learned something you never had to learn. Webb continued. When survival is at stake, there are no rules. There is only victory or extinction. Admiral Chen was called to testify. She walked to the central platform with measured steps, her military bearing perfect despite the weight of judgment upon her. Admiral Chen, Prosecutor Velthon began. Did you know that your actions violated Council law? Yes, Chen replied simply. Did you care? No. The blunt answer sent shockwaves through the chamber. No attempted justification, no legal maneuvering, just honest admission. Why? Velthon demanded. Why didn't you care about laws that have governed galactic civilization for 200,000 years? Chen met his gaze steadily. Because following those laws meant losing. And losing meant the Velkari would continue killing millions of Council citizens while you debated proper protocol. So you decided that human judgment was superior to Council law? No, Chen said. I decided that survival was more important than legal compliance. The Velkari weren't following your laws. They were killing civilians using banned weapons and refusing all negotiation. You couldn't stop them because you were too civilized. Too civilized? Velthon's voice dripped with sarcasm. You say that as if civilization is a weakness. It is, Chen replied. When your enemy has no civilization, when they're willing to do anything to win and you're bound by ancient rules, that's when civilization becomes a chain that drags you to defeat. She activated her own display, showing the timeline of the Velkari conflict. Before humanity intervened, you lost 12 colony worlds, 2 million dead. The Kravik Armada, following every protocol, was being destroyed. Your committees debated while people died. Your arbiters monitored compliance while the enemy ignored every rule. The images shifted to show Council military operations. Beautiful formations, precise strikes on military targets only, warnings given before each attack. Everything by the book. You fought a civilized war against an uncivilized enemy, Chen said, and you were losing. So you asked us to help. You knew we were violent. You knew we were primitive. You just didn't realize that our violence was exactly what you needed. What we needed was compliance with our laws. Felthon objected. No, Chen corrected. What you needed was someone willing to break those laws to save your people. Someone who remembered that war isn't a game with rules. It's survival with consequences. She pulled up the final display. The casualty figures post-human intervention. After we ended the Velkari threat, how many council citizens died? 0. How many colonies fell? 0. How long did the war last? 72 hours after our ultimatum. We saved millions of lives by being willing to do what you couldn't. Webb returned to the floor for closing arguments. Honored Council, humanity stands accused of being uncivilized, of being violent, of being dangerous. And we admit to all of it. We are dangerous. We are violent. And yes, by your standards, we are uncivilized. He looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. But ask yourselves this. When the Velkari came for you, when they broke your laws and killed your people, when your civilization's greatest strength became your greatest weakness, who did you call? Who did you beg to save you? Silence answered him. You called the violent primitives, Webb said softly. You called the humans. Because deep down you knew that sometimes civilization needs monsters to protect it. Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be willing to wage total war. Sometimes the only way to save lives is to be willing to take them without hesitation or remorse. He returned to his seat beside Chen. We did what you asked. We resolved the situation. We saved millions of lives. If that makes us criminals in your eyes, then we'll accept that judgment. But we won't apologize for choosing survival over compliance. We won't apologize for doing what was necessary, and we won't pretend that your rules would have saved anyone. The council recessed to deliberate. The debate lasted 3 days. Delegates argued passionately on both sides. Some demanded harsh punishment. Others defended humanity's actions. The galaxy watched and waited. On the 4th day, the council reconvened. Keeper Ysaldrin, ancient and wise, rose to announce the decision. Her 800 years of life carried weight that no other voice in the chamber could match. The council has reached a verdict, she said, her voice echoing through the silent chamber. But before we announce it, I must speak as one who remembers the great conflagration. The verdict echoed through the chamber like thunder. Not guilty. The word seemed impossible after days of testimony detailing humanity's violations. Yet Keeper Ysaldrin stood firm, her ancient eyes surveying the shocked delegates. However, she continued, and the chamber quieted again, this verdict comes with conditions. Admiral Chen remained standing at the central platform, her expression carefully neutral. She had expected this. The council couldn't simply let humanity walk away with no consequences. That would undermine 200,000 years of legal tradition. Humanity will be designated as the council's final option, Ysaldrin explained. You will be deployed only when existential threats emerge that cannot be resolved through civilized means. You will not participate in standard council conflicts. You will not be called upon for border disputes or minor military actions. You will be reserved for situations where the council itself faces destruction. Commander Zixthorn rose from his seat, his scaled features twisted with displeasure. You're making them our executioners. Our monsters on a leash? Yes, Ysaldrin agreed simply. Because sometimes monsters are necessary. The Velkari proved that. And I would rather have humanity as a controlled weapon than face another existential threat unprepared. The Primarch continued outlining the conditions. Human military doctrine would be studied by council strategists, not to replicate it but to understand it, to know when such measures might be necessary. The civilized warfare accords would remain in full effect for all other species. Humanity alone would be exempt, but only when specifically authorized. Humanity will receive full council membership, Ysaldrin announced, but you will also be subject to special military oversight. A council of observers will monitor your military development. You will report your capabilities honestly, and you will only act when the full council votes to authorize your deployment. It was a compromise. Humanity would be accepted but controlled, welcomed but feared, trusted but watched constantly. Admiral Chen stepped forward to respond. Every eye in the chamber focused on her. Would humanity accept these restrictions? Would they demand full freedom? Or would they reject council membership entirely? The United Earth government accepts these terms, Chen said clearly. But I want to make something very clear to this council. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Not the wars this time. The aftermath. The rebuilding. The survivors picking through nuclear ruins. Children being born in underground shelters. Scientists working to decontaminate poisoned soil. We don't celebrate what we are, Chen said quietly. Every weapon we used against the Velkari exists because we used it on ourselves first. Every terrible strategy we demonstrated, we learned fighting our own species. We know the cost of total war better than anyone in this chamber. She pulled up images of human memorials, the names of billions who died in Earth's conflicts, monuments to the victims of humanity's own violence. You call us barbaric for obliterating our enemies, but ask yourselves this. How many of your people died before you finally asked us to do what was necessary? How many more would have died if we had followed your rules? Her voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. We don't enjoy being monsters. We don't want to be the galaxy's executioners. We accept this role because someone has to. Because we've learned the hardest lesson in the universe. Sometimes the only way to preserve civilization is to be willing to abandon it. She met Isaldrin's ancient gaze. We'll serve as your final option. We'll be the monsters you need when all else fails. But understand this. Every time you call us, every time you ask us to unleash what we're capable of, we'll remember. We'll remember that your civilization was built on rules you couldn't break, even when breaking them was necessary, and we'll carry that burden so you don't have to. The chamber remained silent as Chen returned to her seat. The vote was called. Humanity's new status as final option and full council members was approved by a narrow margin. Fear won over principle. Pragmatism defeated ideology. As the session ended, delegates filed out in small groups, whispering among themselves. Some were relieved. Others were horrified. All were changed by what they had witnessed. Ambassador Velshara approached Chen in the corridor outside the chambers. Her forearms gestured uncertainty. Admiral, I don't know whether to thank you or fear you. Both, Chen replied honestly. That's probably the right response. Will you really only act when authorized? Or will you take matters into your own hands if you think the council is making a mistake? Chen considered the question carefully. We'll follow the rules we agreed to. Unless following those rules means watching millions die, then, she paused, then we'll break them and face the consequences. Just like we did with the Velkari. Velshara's crystalline eyes flickered with understanding. You're saying we can't truly control you? No one can control humanity, Chen said. Not even ourselves. We've been trying for 10,000 years. But we can choose to restrain ourselves. We can choose to only break our chains when survival demands it. That's the best we can offer. The years passed. The Galactic Council settled into a new normal. The civilized warfare accords remained in effect. Minor conflicts still occurred, resolved according to ancient protocols. But something had changed in the galaxy's consciousness. Every council vessel now carried a small black box in a secure location. Inside was a communication device linked directly to Earth's military command. No paperwork, no committee approval needed. Just a simple activation code that any captain could use in a true emergency. The boxes were called Omega Protocols. In 50 years, none were ever activated, but their presence changed how the galaxy thought about threats. Potential aggressors knew that behind the Council's civilized facade stood humanity, waiting and watching. In the Council chambers, a new monument was erected, a simple black obelisk made of earthstone. Inscribed on its surface were the names of every sapient being who died in the Velkari incursion. 2 million names in hundreds of languages. At the base, a plaque read, "In memory of those lost before humanity taught us the difference between civilization and survival. May we never forget either lesson." Admiral Victoria Chen, now retired, visited the memorial on the 50th anniversary of the trial. She stood alone before the obelisk, reading names she had memorized decades ago. The faces she had failed to save before humanity was called. A young Cathani cadet approached hesitantly. She wore the uniform of the Council Defense Academy, where human military doctrine was now taught as part of the curriculum. "Admiral Chen?" the cadet asked. "Just Chen now," she replied. "I retired 30 years ago." "I wanted to ask you something," the cadet said nervously. "We study what you did. The Velkari operation, the weapons, the tactics, the efficiency, but none of the instructors will answer the real question. Which is, do you regret it? Killing so many? Breaking every rule?" Chen looked at the young cadet. She saw the same question she had asked herself every day for 50 years. The same question that woke her from nightmares where Velkari drones screamed as reality bent around them. "Every single day," Chen said honestly, "I regret every life we took, every rule we broke, every moment of terror we inflicted. I carry those deaths with me like stones in my chest." The cadet looked confused. "But you said it was necessary." "It was," Chen agreed. "That's what makes it regret instead of guilt. Necessary doesn't mean right. It just means the alternative was worse." She gestured to the memorial. 2 million dead before we acted. Millions more if we hadn't. I made a choice. The right choice. But that doesn't mean I have to like what it cost." She looked up at the obelisk, at the name stretching endlessly upward. "We did what had to be done to save lives. That's what makes us human. Not our violence. Not our weapons. But our willingness to carry the weight of necessary evil so others don't have to." The cadet was quiet for a long moment. "Do you think the galaxy will ever need humanity like that again?" Chen considered the question. 50 years of peace. The Council had reformed some of its procedures, made its response times faster. But the fundamental truth remained unchanged. Civilization was still built on rules that assumed everyone would follow them. "I hope not," Chen said finally. "I really hope not. Because every time they call us, every time they need us to be monsters, it costs us something we can never get back. Our belief that we're better than our worst moments. Our hope that maybe someday violence won't be necessary." She turned to leave, then paused. "But if they do need us again, we'll answer. That's the burden we accepted. The price of being humanity." Years later, in a small apartment on Earth, Chen sat before a window looking out at a peaceful city. Her grandchildren played in the next room. The sounds of their laughter drifted through the quiet space. On her desk sat a small communication device, inactive for decades, connected to every Omega protocol box in Council space. If it ever activated, she would know. The galaxy would be calling its monsters again. She hoped it would stay silent. Every morning she checked it, half dreading, half expecting the activation signal. Every night she went to sleep grateful for another day of peace, because she knew the truth that the Council was still learning. Peace wasn't natural. It wasn't the default state of the universe. Peace was maintained by the threat of war.